Hello everybody and welcome back to a special episode. I'm not going to qualify this as a real episode because it's really not. I just realized that after going like 3 episodes past getting the book, I never really took a look at it and told you guys what it said. So this is just a supplementary episode. Feel free to skip this. This is just looking at the book and a little extra stuff. I don't remember what the extra stuff is though at the moment, so Uh, I dedicate this to my dearest Raven. I would gladly face these horrors 1,000 and 1,000 others for only another moment with you. He's after my girl. Dearest reader, it is only with the greatest fear and trepidation that I share this hallowing tale with you today. Even here, safe within the confines of my own home, I am still overcome with dread at the thought of what I am about to tell you, and what it might mean for me or those close to me. And yet I feel compelled to do so, and the great muse guides my pen to this paper, and the words flow forth from the darkest regions of my heart and mind, where they have stayed well hidden until this very evening. I beg of you, give ear to my confession, and, if it please you, take this tale from me in return only your belief and trust that what you are about to hear is only and nothing but the truth. My name is Renford A. Terwilliger, born of the outlying regions of Ashbury, not far from the lair of Pelargrim, where they found the bones of the great dragon. My childhood was a bright one, full of happiness and light, and my parents gave to me all that a child might need. I was schooled both practically and excellently, and when my 18th year came around I was accepted into Tarrant University, and ultimately found my way into the Tarantian Zoological Society. Archaeology was my first love, but my first assignment with the society was with the Cultural Anthropology Department. It was somewhat of a farce, actually, but the society had been given an enormous grant by one of Tarrant's leading philanthropists for a very specific purpose. The purpose was to confirm the existence of the Dark Elves. Every man, woman, and child in Arcanum has been raised on ghost stories and bedtime tales of these strange people known only as the Dark Elves. To the anthropologist, they are the proverbial oasis in the desert. Proof of their existence has always literally disappeared into the air. No man had ever set eyes upon them, and not one shred of physical evidence had ever been found to establish that they were real. Myths and legends were plentiful, but for the itinerant scientist, these mean less than nothing. What we needed was undeniable evidence, and I set out on this adventure with determination and confidence in my ability to bring forth just that. Had I known what lay ahead, I would have forsworn both anthropology and philanthropy, and returned to work as a day laborer in the shipyards. Better the back-breaking work than the nightmares I face every night. Before leaving Tarrant, I employed the services of certain Jaren Benel, an elven tracker who was recommended to me by the noble Mr. Quentin Payne, famed explorer and gentleman in every sense of the word. Jaren Benel had been born in the Glimmering Forest, and it was said there wasn't a more knowledgeable man about the deep elven groves this side of the Stonewell Mountain. His fees were a little less than reasonable, but I had been given enormous liberty in spending the allotted funds, and it was in my honest opinion that Mr. Benal was crucial to the success of the mission. I couldn't have been more correct. Within weeks we were well within the deepest and yet uncharted regions of the western Glimmering, and never once did the unfathomable Mr. Benal look to his compass or consult a map. Occasionally he would stand for a moment within a clearing or beneath a great tree, head cocked, eye closed. But aside from these infrequent moments of meditation, it was all we could do to keep up with him. On the 42nd day of our journey, we came to a great meadow seemingly alive with a multitude of birds and butterflies that flew above. Crossing this fragrant and lively field was one of the most vivid moments I had experienced on the journey so far, and I was so enthralled by the scene around me that I almost missed the spectacular vision given to the eyes of a mortal man. Quintara, the great elven tree city, lay within towering trees in the end of the clearing, hanging like a cut jewel in the crown of a king. The mother tree, almost 400 feet tall, housed the intricately carved Hall of Truth, which shone white and smooth in the noonday sun. Impossibly thin walkways wove in and out of the boughs of the great tree, not taking away from its natural beauty, but adding to it, as if the city were merely a convenient and beautiful tangle of leaves and branches, tattooed with the flowering runes and symbols in the ancient elven tongue. And among these the grateful and live forms of the elves, singing their beautiful songs and looking down upon the ragtag group of men with curiosity and amusement. Of Quintara I can only say this: the month I spent there was the best of my entire life. I learned much less about the Dark Elves than I would have liked, almost nothing at all, really. But the moments I spent there were strange, and wonderful, and breathtaking, and I will not do them a disservice by attempting to put them into words. Suffice it to say that I learned there as a young man what often takes others a lifetime, and no thanks to my teacher. Oh, and to my teacher I give heartfelt thanks and the warmest greetings. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about you. We left the trees in Quintara with little more than faint whispers about the Dark Elves. They might be found. The Elves of Quintara were very reluctant to speak of them, and they begged us to forget such foolishness and go home to Tarant. I, of course, would hear no such talk, and we travelled on north this time, as Mr. Banal believed he had uncovered a clue as to their whereabouts during his investigations in Quintara. And then he discovered a name: Senang, the home of the Dark Elves. We travelled for 17 days, exhausting our supplies and sending most of the party back to Tarant. The forest had become thicker and more brambly, and it seemed that many of the trees were adorned with thorns, some more than a foot long. Another week, and it was only Mr. Banal and myself. We had agreed to return before the first of the month if we failed to find any further evidence of the Dark Elves' existence. It gave us 6 days to find Sanang, and we pressed on despite our anxiety and fatigue. On the day before we had planned to return, the weather took a vicious turn. From the north came dark thunderheads, and lightning flew down from the sky like barbed lances of white fire. It began to rain, and we found an uneasy shelter beneath the massive roots of one of the great trees, which seemed poised over us like a giant and grotesquely gnarled hand. I was shivering, and not altogether from the cold and rain. Weird shadows blazed against the trunks of the trees as the storm strengthened and the lightning became more frequent. Thunder tore the sky above our heads. I looked at Mr. Benale, and for the first time since we left Tarant, I saw fear reflected in his eyes. I can't say when I first became aware of them, but one moment, while looking through the rain, I began to notice shadows that stayed, even after the lightning had subsided. These shadows became phantoms, the phantoms something worse. They were stock still, tall and wiry, ghostly faces the colour of ivory, with eyes of the blackest night. Their hair hung in limp strands against their foreheads and cheeks, and they stood unblinking, oblivious to the storm and its ragings. I screamed something to my right, and then was pulled bodily from the shelter to the roots above. He screamed once more, and then was silent. I never heard from nor saw him again. I ran headlong past the elves in front of me, swinging blindly to clear a path. I was mad with fear, and my feet carried me deeper into the forest. I thought I heard dark and twisted laughter above and behind me, and shadowy figures darted among the trees to my left and right. Thorns tore at my arms and legs, and I stumbled across stones and the underbrush, screaming incoherently. More than once, great elven arrows sunk into the trees around me, grazing my skin as they flew by. They were playing with me, enjoying the hunt, waiting for just the right moment. My head was light from exhaustion and blood loss, and I fell to my knees gasping for air. When I looked up, I saw it. There, in the trees above me, was Tsen Ang, the home of the Dark Elves. Unlike Quintara, Tsen Ang was an abomination, slouched in the branches like a great beast waiting for its prey. There were sputtering fires all along its battlements, and great spikes protruding from every surface like dragon spines. And I saw robed figures, gaunt and terrible, lined along its walkway and looking down upon me, beckoning, it seemed, for me to join them. I screamed again, and the figures seemed to raise their voices in unison, a terrible call without sound or meaning, but I heard them nonetheless. They were cursing me. They were welcoming me. In moments, I was surrounded again by my pursuers. Through the downpour I saw them unleash daggers, unsheathed daggers, their ghosts smiles floating towards me as the thunder roared above. I closed my eyes, praying to whatever god would hear me. There was nothing else I could do. And from nowhere, arrows were flying from behind me and above me. Moments I was encircled completely with half-buried shafts of the thickest hunting arrows, and the dark elves around me whirled to and fro in confusion. One pulled his bow from his back and notched an arrow in one flowing movement, but he was shot through the heart before he'd raised it past his shoulder. He fell silently, unbelievingly. The others looked at me for a moment, the purest hatred harbored in their eyes, and then disappeared into the night, hands conspicuously by their sides. Amazed and spent, I fainted. I awoke some days later, many miles from the northern reaches of the Glimmering. I was alone, but my wounds had been treated, and my supplies had been replenished. I was back in trance not 2 weeks later. I never met my rescuers, but I can guess who they were and where they were from, and I thank them if they are reading this. Without their aid, I would have surely died there in the shadow of Senang. And so, dear friend, again I beg of you to believe these words, and the man who has told them to you. I do so only to share this burden with others, to gain comfort among those of my kind. At the very least, let these words stand as a warning to you. Often evil is a tangible thing, and sometimes it is a place and a people. Such are the Dark Elves, and such is the hell that is called their home. I never return to the Glimmering Forest, and I pray that I never do. Some things are better left alone. Thank you. See you next time. Adios.